This Week 7 game against the Steelers is a clear crossroads. And yes, I try to be realistic. I try to present the foibles and the warts as an underlining base for everything I say, because I believe I'm trying to evaluate and not cheerlead. I think there's loads of hope for the season, but I think there's loads of concern. You have to wait to see things, how they play out. And within that, how they play out, there is randomness. And this is why I pretty much always have caveats when I say this or that, because the NFL is a whiplash game. So I want to cover a few topics. I want to really try to do my best to give you guys good information and be exact. So I'm going to have my chapters today. Chapters will be the trade talk, and that's going to tie into our free agency leading into the season, possibilities at this moment for trades. I'm going to delve into that because there's a lot of talk about that. I think some of it's pie in the sky, but we'll get into that. Then I want to get into, we had options heading into the season, and now with this trade thing going down, we're going to go, I want to talk about how we could have used the assets we had and decisions we made in reflection to current players. I'll flesh that out as we go, but I hope it makes sense. And then I want to get into personnel groupings. This was a key for last year. It was a key to what I saw as our failures on offense and what our personnel groupings are looking like currently and how that ties into back to last year and this year. And then tangible ways to fix this offensive line. It's not an easy fix. It's not a clear fix, but the road forward looks very clear to me. This is my opinion and how I think we can move forward. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. There'll be 4 chapters. You can check them out. And I'll try to do my best to make sure they're clear. Before I get into that, I want to say thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate that. I always do. And I had a couple, it's great every single time to get a couple of comments on everything I do that helps me think differently, see different avenues and aspects. And I always appreciate that. So thanks for everything. I want to give you guys a shout out. But I also want to give a shout out to Ace Per Head, my sponsor. Without you guys, without them, this show ain't going down. Ace Per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. All right, so there's a lot of trade talk going on right now. Main objects of conversation is Gesicki, moving him for something of value. And then the Panthers, who many are saying they're in a fire sale, and a lot of the object of attention is on the offensive line, getting someone from that offensive line. Moton is the key of the talk, getting him over here to Miami at whatever the cost. Now, I'm going to deal with this in 2 parts. But the first part I want to deal with is anything can happen. I'm not saying I got all the answers. There's other people out there saying something different. I could just give my perspective. But from my perspective, trading him for Moton is pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. Could be wrong, but I have some concrete reasons why this might not, even if it goes down, be happy times in the long run for Miami. Now, Moton, he had a contract extension last year to help give them salary cap relief. And when you look at his contract, is a lot of upfront money guaranteed. Next year is going to be $24 million guaranteed. You're going to have to pay that much for him, and there's no way to get out. Panthers are not going to eat all that money. So you're going to have to carry a heavy payload. And whatever you give, it's going to be in the understanding of paying him going forward. He's not going to restructure. Certainly not next year. Maybe the year after that, 24, but not next year. And if you look at the Dolphins this year, we have 6 in space right now. So he's worth about 6. Maybe they'll eat some, whatever. So maybe you can make it happen this year. But next year, we have $18 million in cap space, and given what his guarantees are, unless we have absolute thievery, you're going to be -6 with Moton. And Moton is a quality tackle in pass block, but he struggles in the run blocking game, and he's not elite. So you're going to have to take on a huge contract for a guy who might have an upside. Maybe you could develop him, but he's not a great run blocker. And again, my belief, and I'm going to tie this into later, the run game is critical for this team, obviously with what McDaniel likes to do. And I believe that a run game is more crucial for Tua because of his ability to run the RPO, the quick release, off-play action, and his movement skills, even more so than elite receivers. That run game is going to create consistency. And a balanced offensive lineman is going to be key to that. I don't like the Moton deal from a talent standpoint fitting into our game. I don't like it as in a contract situation because, you lost a lot of picks in getting Hill and getting Waddle, and with Ross's deal, you're going to have to fill some holes. Guys are moving on. And to take on $24 million in 2023 for a lopsided tackle doesn't seem like a great fit. Now, Gesicki. I would move Gesicki no matter what. He's not part of the future here from what we've seen. He's able to make plays. I told you he's a mid to late clock guy. And if you can get to that mid to late clock, he is excellent. But for him to really get his high ability rolling, you need to be able to, and this is going to tie into the personnel groupings, run 3 wides and still able to pass protect. And either he's the tight end in the 3 wide or he's the 3rd wide stretched out wide. We do not run wide scheme looks. Our personnel groupings, whether, and I'll get into this next, by design or look, is bunch 12 personnel, and it doesn't really suit him that well because of his lack of blocking. So we should move him for anything, but we didn't move him in the offseason. We're going to get less for him now. But we're not going to keep him. That's going to be a 10 to 15 million for him next year. So Grier kind of played it the wrong way, possibly, unless he could pull something off. And I've said all the time, I really don't like Grier, but he's a good wheeler and dealer. I just don't necessarily like his consistency on what he does with the picks. So I wouldn't put it past him to get something really good for Gesicki, and he should. But there's a problem with that, too, because Grier drafted Hunter Long to replace him. That was obviously the reason. You spent a 3rd-round pick on a tight end who's pretty much like Gesicki with less receiving skills. He's not an athlete. He was supposed to be a better blocker, which he's not. And he's terrible. He is terrible at this stage. Now, maybe next year he can get better, but you're in your 3rd year on a 3rd-round pick with 0 production practically year 1 and 0 production in year 2. This kind of puts a hole. And somebody brought up, I wish I remember his name, it was a great comment, 5 tight ends and 8 offensive linemen. This is an imbalance. Who made this choice? Why, if we're really looking to win and talent, did we make some of the choices we made? And I'm going to continue with that. Ced Wilson, he's got a 3-year, $22 million contract, $10 million this year. Gesicki is $11 million. And look at their production. I still think Gesicki is a good player. We should keep him and utilize him, but we can't in our situation. But anyway, that is $21 million in receivers. Ced Wilson barely makes the field, and he really hasn't done much when he's there. Gesicki's only started to rise, and part of that ties into the personnel groupings. We have been strapped with 5 tight ends, none of them really great tight ends. Gesicki's a great pass catcher, but he can't really block that well. Smythe's okay. Connor Tanner maybe develops into something. He's 230 pounds. How good is he? He is supposed to be what Hunter is, and he's supposed to do what Gesicki is catch the passes, but he's neither. So we have all these guys, and the blocking of the tight ends is part of the reason why the offensive line's failing. And this, again, will tie into personnel groupings. For me, Morgan Moses I said it. Morgan Moses from the Jets was a free agent. No one really wanted him. He was cheap. He's like $10 million for like 2 or 3 years. It's ridiculously low. And he's playing better than anybody not named Tehran at the tackle position by a country mile. But Morgan Moses with Tehran would have forced Jackson to be in the backdrop. And to me, it goes back to pedigree over production in the Miami Dolphins' choices of talent. And that, to me, doesn't speak about McDaniel. It speaks about Greer, possibly. We'll see. But Morgan Moses, and if you even look farther, we got Edmonds for a 2-year deal, $12 million, so it's like $6 million a year. That would have been Morgan Moses right there. And Edmonds, he can run the football, but he can't catch, and he can't run pass block. So he's been finding his way back farther and farther. Mostert was a good signing. He's doing all kinds of stuff. But we spent $6 million that could have gone right to Morgan Moses, and he would have solidified it. But for some reason, we didn't want to bring offensive linemen. And that goes to the draft. Tyndale might turn out to be a great player. Right now, he hasn't done much of anything. EZ might turn to be a great player, but he hasn't done much of anything. You got Gesicki for 11. You got Said for $10 million. You spent your third comp pick on Tyndale, and you spent your fourth on EZ. But if you go look, there is about 4 or 5 linemen that are playing better than guys that are on our offensive line right now. And at worst case, they would have added depth and allowed us to trim back certain position groups so we could have had 9 or 10 offensive linemen, which it's looking like we really need because we're pulling guys off the street to come in here. Shell, move him inside, but as a tackle, he's got 9 pressures in 2 games. And if you go look, well, I'll get into that later. I'll get into that when I talk about fixing the offensive line. So personnel groupings creates matchups. It accentuates or devalues your talent based on what you got. Okay, last year, we ran 12 personnel 61% of the time, mostly in look, but sometimes also in mostly in personnel, but sometimes actually in look as well. And that constricts you in many ways. When you bunch up, when you run 12 personnel with 2 tight ends, or, tight end, fullback, whatever, it brings the defense closer to the line of scrimmage. This allows them to create complex looks of attack. It allows blitzers to come in free, and it also puts so much in the front that it makes it harder to run the football. And this has restricted our run game and also our ability to spread guys out and to create space. Because pressure gets in much quicker when everybody's bunched. You will get big plays, as we do see, but the consistency isn't there, and that consistency is not held together by a solid run game, which takes pressure off the quarterback, and it gives 2 things for the defense to focus on, which will then allow you, through good play calls, to get those plays, to create the consistency. But we can't do it because everybody bunches up and we can't block well enough, which it makes it harder to block. So if you look at our game, I only did the first half. We got Said Wilson, Gesicki, Hill, Waddle, and we spent a 4th on EZ. And we ran 12 personnel 13 times by look or personnels, by players. So we had either 2 tight ends in there, or, tight end and fullback, or we bring a running back or extra running back in, or a receiver, and then they do motion to go behind the line of scrimmage or within that tackle box, which is 12 personnel once again because you're bringing everybody in. And that 12 personnel crunch was then emphasized by running loads of bunch or semi-bunch formations. And when I say bunch, means your guys are like 10 yards, let's say, from the line of scrimmage, from the sidelines. Or in a semi-bunch where one guy is a little bit closer to the sidelines, but the rest of the guys are closed up. So however you slice it, you're able to bring that defense and funnel them in and put, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys in the box. And that restricts everything that McDaniel is trying to do, restricts our run game, and it creates free blitzers. You notice on a play action, a free blitzer will come in. That's how you get that look. If you got guys spread out wide, it's very difficult to do that because you got everybody dropping back and you've immediately created space. So we had 11 plays in bunch and semi-bunch along with 13, 12 personnel. Now, we have all this receiving talent, and yet we only ran 3 wide receivers or wide looks around 5 to 7 times. And I'd say at least half those times when we spread wide, there was pressure, and the quarterback had instant pressure. This is why, if you notice, when Teddy came in, we went to heavy run because the pressure was apparent, and we wanted to run to get them out of the pressure. But we weren't able to do that. We had some success in the run, and it helped a little bit, but you could see the pressure was on Teddy all day. And you could say maybe he could have done better, whatever. But clearly, we were throwing a football, and then we went to a run look. Why? Because we have to run these bunch looks. We have to run this 12 personnel to try to help out the blockers. It's a way for us to, it's a good look. You know, if we had a good offensive line, we'd be killing people. It's good. You get all the things up there, and you get a lot of guys going out into routes, and people get confused, and they break open, all this stuff. That is really good. But it's intermittent, high levels of pressure and stopping of the run that spoils it all. But we got to keep them in because if we spread out too wide, they run some quick stunts with 4 rushers, which leaves them having 7 guys in dropping into zones. And we can't suck up that extra defender to have 5 rushers enough to set the freedom of the receivers and to get those easy big plays because they're able to generate pressure with 4 rushers against our 5 offensive linemen and possibly 2 or 3 other guys blocking. And so that's why we have to bunch, and then they bring their stuff up, and it goes to an arm race that we're losing. So I wanted to focus on that a little bit and move over to the offensive line. To me, we can fix this. Problem is, McDaniel's designs are zone stretch. Zone stretch, if you don't understand, zone stretch and inside zone. One is designed to stretch the defense, snap it someplace, either hit the perimeter or snap it someplace and you bring it back. Inside zone, everybody blocks a zone. The running back gets the ball and then he picks and chooses. And it's not as demanding on the blockers because the running back has more options. The inside zone doesn't break down the protection by one bad block. Sometimes it actually helps. It's a more sustainable blocking scheme than zone stretch because if you run zone stretch and you can't even get the outside guy pushed out, you close everything up and then you have a harder time getting that cutback. And then if you have problems on the inside, like say with Eichenberg, then you get a guy coming in and he shuts down, he cuts the zone stretch in half, which it makes it very difficult. We get some big runs on that because we got some fast guys, and if you hit it the right way, but it's not consistent. So inside zone, you could put Shell in for Eichenberg and have him sit. You could have Tehran, Shell, Connor, Hunt, and then maybe even Jackson on the outside if you want. Or you could have Hunt go to the right tackle and put Robert Jones in at the right guard. Now you'd have a big look. You would have struggles at the zone stretch, but inside zone would open things up. But this would peel apart all the teachings, all the concepts and philosophies, well, most of them, that McDaniel's been trying to institute and install. And this is why I said incongruent talents for schemes was a major problem. Robert Jones, inside zone guy. And he's your best backup. But he struggles at zone stretch. Tehran, much better at zone stretch than inside zone. Hunt, I like him. He's a balance for both. Connor, he could play both, but his weakness, his tad weakness to deal with power might hurt him a little bit at inside zone. Eichenberg struggles at both. But I like Shell. If you watch Shell, he blocks pretty good. This is why I think he should be taking over left guard. But it's a question, why hasn't he? Why do you go into the season with Little, who stinks. 25 pressures on the season. How do you go in with 8 offensive linemen with Tehran, my man Tehran, who I love, but he's injury prone. He's got injury history. Eichenberg, who clearly stinks and should have been pushed to earn his spot or get booted. Connor, excellent inside. Some little things he's working on. Hunt, excellent inside. Some weaknesses because of all the stuff that's going on around him. But Little is a disaster. How do you go into the season with him? And then Jackson, he hasn't proven anything either inside or outside. How do you rely on these two guys? It doesn't make sense. Something doesn't make sense. And I don't think it has anything to do with McDaniel. I think it goes back to a core understanding that we were told Greer's just a nice guy who does what everybody tells him. Well, we're at a crossroads here. Was McDaniel poor at putting together his roster and evaluating talent, or was he under the restrictions of Grier being in charge? We can fix this thing if we went to inside zone. We could still fix this thing as it is if Tehran stays healthy, but not with Little. You got to pray. You could just put Shell in at left guard and bench Eichenberg and it would lift this thing up. But then you still got to pray that Jackson comes in and plays pretty good. Because if he can play okay and Shell can lock down that left guard spot and Tehran stays healthy and you got Connor and Hunt and you can protect him, it's going to be a lot better opportunities. But then you're going to have to depend on the tight ends to help out Jackson and the rest. So it's not a total fix, but clearly pulling Eichenberg out, his run blocking is bad. Worse than his pass blocking. But Shell, I think, would play much better than him there. So this is my fix. This is my questions. This is what I think about the trades. Want to hear what you guys have to say. I don't think I got all the answers. This is just my thoughts, and I'm looking to hear yours because, honestly, I refine what I think by what you guys say, and that's why I love the comments. Anyway, I think we can win. Tehran comes in healthy. 2 is in. Maybe Jackson comes in. He's not great, but he's better than Little. We can win this, and we need to win this. We need this, guys. We need this. This will be a very hard loss, but a very big win if we can get it. Curtis saying thanks. Thanks for staying to the end. I almost lost it. Thanks for staying to the end. Get you next time. Go Phins. Big week. Be well. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.